The world as we know it is gone. It's just gray, boring, and dead. Kind of like real life. Except in this world, we can save it. It just requires a lot of reading, magic creating, and altar making. Like to get this block of dirt. It took me around an hour. This flour, about 4 hours. This chicken, well over 10 hours of constant grinding. As you can probably tell, this world isn't for the weak, and you're about to see a wild, difficult journey of me saving the planet. Starting off in this gray and desolate area, there's a few things of note, but the first thing I look at is my quest book. I may impress all of you with this, but I did some reading. You see, the first quest I have is an introduction. You wake up in a vast, dead and dried out wasteland. You don't remember how you got here, but you do remember what the world should look like. And this isn't it. Well, that's a lie. I do remember how I got here. I downloaded the mod pack and made a world. Anyways, redeeming this quest gave me 4 pieces of bread. Definitely not enough, but I'm not sure how else I can get food since animals won't spawn. Wait, okay, the next quest answered that. Despite the seeming apocalypse, there are still fish to find and eat for those with a skill and desire. I definitely have the skill, and I will definitely take the free fishing rod. Another info quest of note is that the one that says zombie villagers and witches won't spawn, meaning there is 0 way to get villagers. Also, all the spiders are venomous cave spiders. Thanks, game. That feels unnecessary. And then the last bit of info here before I can finally start playing. This one just says that there is 0 ore generation and no real vegetation. Okay, after reading through the quest, I can officially start playing. I immediately collect some of the dead bushes around me for sticks, then I break the dead logs around me, which, putting into a crafting table, turn it into scrap wood. Then 4 of that turns into 1 plank. Oh boy, this is going to be slow. Redeeming the quest for collecting the logs and planks, I am rewarded charcoal. I also noticed that there's a new tab on the side for bees. I can eventually use these modded bees for resources later on. The next thing I do is turn all of my logs into planks and make a crafting table. After that, I collect some more logs so I can make a wooden pickaxe and immediately collect stone for stone tools. I collect more than enough for a pickaxe and axe and continue venturing out, looking for these rundown shrines around me. Some of them have oxidized copper blocks, which I can cut down into ingots for further use. After making a little hidey hole in a cave, I go to make a cutting board, but accidentally make a crafting table. Great use of the already limited wood I have. After correctly making a cutting board, I deoxidize my copper with my axe, put the copper on the cutting board, and use my pickaxe to turn it into ingots. Turns out I can also use my logs on a cutting board for better scrap yield, so I turn a few pieces of that into scrap for logs. Then I make a furnace to start smelting stone for some of those new modded machines I have to make for the ultimate goal of this first chapter: dirt. Using 4 pieces of stone and 3 pieces of copper, I'm able to make a ammoniac tank. I don't know what salmon has to do with this, but I have no idea what any of this stuff does. I'm just doing what I'm told. Then I made a ammoniac accumulator. I was going to need a lot more copper and stone before I was able to finish making all of the pieces of early game machinery. So I went out and collected some cobble before heading back and crafting the pyromantic brazier, and then the calcination oven. These will essentially turn materials into that material's form of salt. Placing the brazier with the oven on top, lighting the brazier with some charcoal, and then placing in some cobblestone, I receive strata salt, which I can use to make dirt. While looking throughout the recipes, I am attacked by a husk, which gives me the hunger effect, which is great because I already have loads of food to burn through. After the sun rose, I collected my things and ventured out of the cave. I then made a shovel so I could start collecting clay and sand. I'm going to need loads of both of those things for various materials for future items, so I might as well go ahead and start collecting it. I also managed to find 2 more pieces of copper from the ruins, so I collected those as well. After making it to a body of water, I put down my crafting table, made a double chest to start the chest monster early, stored my junk, and then took my sand and clay to make Caminite blend. I made 3 stacks, which retrospectively might have been a bit too much, but nonetheless, using 2 pieces of the Caminite blend, I was able to make a bucket with copper. Next, I was going to need a bunch more copper for the rest of the early game machinery. So I started to head out to look for more ruins. But before, I made a waypoint to mark my new base.
Sure, home sweet home. Yeah, nice, why not?
While I was out collecting copper, I also collected as many sticks from dead bushes and seed from grass as much as possible. Eventually, the sun started to set, so I made my way back. When I got back to my stuff, I quickly mined some cobble from a nearby hill to build a small cobblestone base to protect myself during the night, since these lovely husks could just easily end this video right off the bat with my current loot. After I was done with that, I started to cut my copper on the cutting board, and I ended with a stack of copper ingots. Then I made a mercury distiller, the next piece for making ingredients of dirt. The mercury distiller is a device that will extract alchemical mercury from items. I then placed the brazier in the distiller with the brazier, placed some cobble into the distiller to start making mercury. Finally, I made another bucket. Then I made a liquefaction cauldron using the bucket, some copper, and some stone. The last piece of machinery to make all of the ingredients needed for dirt. I did end up running out of cobblestone, so I dug out a hole underneath my base and started mining some stone. I did get bored pretty early on though, only collected about half a stack. Next, I placed the sal ammoniac accumulator, filled it with water buckets, and it started making sal ammoniac. It was pretty slow, but eventually it accumulated a bucket of it. I then collected it, placed it in the liquefaction cauldron with some dried earth. I then started the process to make the multi-block machine to combine all of the ingredients to make dirt. The incubator, this 5-block machine, was pretty easy to make, but unfortunately, it will take a bunch of materials. I started with the incubator salt vessel using salt, copper, and stone. I then made an incubator sulfur vessel with sulfur, what a shocker there, copper, and stone. Next was the mercury vessel with, you guessed it, mercury, copper, and stone. And finally, after waiting for some stone to finish smelting, I made the incubator. At first, I was a little confused on how to build this, but after reading the quest book a little, I was able to figure it out. First, I placed the brazier, then the incubator on top, then the salt vessel, sulfur vessel, and finally, the mercury vessel on the side. Then I placed the retrospective, what is that? Is that a real word? Ingredients inside their vessel. Lit the brazier with some charcoal, and finally, I had some dirt.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Okay, it feels like it's been so much longer than 3 days, but oh my god, I finally have dirt. I never thought in my life I would actually be excited to get dirt.
You know, casually, dirt is one of the first things people collect in the Minecraft world. The fact that it took 3 days really shows how long this pack is going to take. Oh boy. Collecting the dirt unlocked my next chapter, a whiff of normal. It seems this questline will take me to making grass, but the first thing it wanted me to do was collect all 6 seeds that can drop from naturally grown grass. I already had wheat and something called mandrake, so I only had to get 4 more. After whacking around for a little bit, not like that, I managed to get snowbell seeds, then wolf's bane seeds. I also found something on the ground called Inferium Essence. This essence will probably be one of the most powerful things in this mod pack down the line. Then I found some belladonna seeds. And finally, the last seed I needed for the quest, water artichoke. I then made my way back to my base and made a stone hoe. I tried to till the dried earth, but I soon realized I would need to use the dirt I just made to plant seeds. So I placed a few pieces of dirt and planted my various seeds that I acquired. The next quest said I needed to craft crop sticks, which is just 4 sticks crafted together. Before traversing down the long and quite frankly, pretty cool path of AgriCraft, the mod that implements this crop stuff, I want to explain a little about it. AgriCraft adds levels to plants that can affect their growth rate, how much they dropped, and most importantly, mutation. You see, if you put 2 crops together with crop sticks, they can mutate into another plant. This will become very important later on, just not right now because I have no clue what I'm doing. I was getting confused with the planting system here, so I ended up moving my farm onto land, but continued to get even more confused. So I gave up for the time being and collected some more stone for braziers for each part of the machines I made earlier, so I wouldn't have to share one with all of them. I then made a flimsy door for a little protection, but the word flimsy really holds true here because it does not last long. I also made some more mercury since compared to all the other ingredients for dirt, this seemed to be the most expensive now. I then collected some more dirt, expanded my farm a bit, and planted some seeds. At this point, I really wanted a bed. But for that, I would need wool, and since I really didn't trust myself to kill the wandering cave spiders for string, so I looked for another way to find string. Turns out I can get it from a plant called flax, which I can get from mutating wheat in belladonna. But that would be an issue for another day since it was now nighttime. While waiting out the night, I noticed an addition to the resource generation questline, mystical agriculture. Remember that essence I found earlier? Turns out, through farming, that essence can turn into seeds that produce my various different types of stones, ingots, and even the essence itself. The next quest I would be tackling would be getting carrots, which I can get from mutating wheat and snowbell seeds together. I attempted planting during the night, but I was hit by a husk, so with my big boy pants on, I ran back to my house and blocked myself in. I was also starting to run out of food, so for the rest of the night, I decided to fish to get as much extra food as I could. After the sun rose on day 4, I ran outside and started clearing the husk that were wandering around, and of course, I got hit, which meant my hunger was going to deplete even more. I then collected about half a stack of cobble for some mercury. I was starting to run low on wood, so I went back out exploring and chopped down some trees till I had about a stack of logs before heading back home. And instead of turning the logs into single scraps, I used my thinking cap and used the cutting boards. And even though this took a bit more time and more axe durability, the yield of the scraps were so much better. I then tried to mutate the wheat and snowbell seeds together by placing them beside some crop sticks, but they weren't mutating together. I tried reading through the recipe again to see if I was missing something, but it wasn't very informative. Unfortunately, it was starting to turn night, so I blocked myself back inside my base and started fishing once again for some food. But I got bored pretty quickly and decided to look through the quest again. For one of the next quests that I'll need, I will need something called a fluid vessel, which will need another Sal Almanac tank for the recipe. But that needed stone, and I was freshly out of that, so I head back into the little hole I have under my base and started mining some cobble until I got about 50 pieces. I take the tank and started smelting a calamite blend for some bricks. Eventually enough pieces smelted and I was able to combine them with the tank and some copper to make the fluid vessel. But before I could fill it with whatever fluid it needed, I fished to wait out the rest of the night. After the sun rose, I went out to the tiny farm I had and noticed that the seeds still have not mutated into a carrot. I tried reading through the book it gave me for a guide, but there were a lot of words, and you all know how I can't read. So instead of trying to figure it out further, I just bone mealed my mandrake and collected the mandrake root, which will be used for making the fluid in the fluid vessel. I placed the vessel and then a sal almanac accumulator on top and realized I would need a sal almanac fluid to make this work. So I made another accumulator and put in some water and waited for it to, accumulate. While waiting, I decided to finally do a wise thing and look up why this mutation wasn't working. Turns out, I need crop sticks in the middle and on top of the crops I want to mutate. And after genuinely 5 minutes of trying to place the crop sticks on top of the plants, I managed to get them down. During this time of, research.
Oh God, please just place it. Please just place it. Please just... Oh my God, please just place it.
The sal almanac fluid accumulated and I placed it into the fluid vessel, but I would need 2 buckets of it, so I placed some more water and, once again, waited for it to turn into the purple juice. During this time, I finally made all the braziers I needed for the other machinery pieces and placed them all outside. I also made a composting bin since I figured I would be doing a lot of planting, I would have a lot of extra seeds, so I could turn it into bone meal. But unfortunately, it was turning night, so by now, you know the drill. Fish until I got bored, and I got bored quick this time. After the fluid finished accumulating, I went outside, placed some torches around the land, grew some mandrake with bone meal, and placed it into the vessel. And then waited for this red fluid to make it until there was enough for a full bucket of it. Now that I have, quite frankly, a concerning amount of red juice, I can now use it as a solvent in my liquefaction cauldron to liquefy copper, which will turn into iron alchemical sulfur. Do you see where we were going here? I placed my juice, not like that, and some copper into the cauldron and lit it up with some planks and collect my iron sulfur. I placed it into the incubator and waited. During this time, I was attacked by a husk, but when I killed it, it gave me its head. As a trophy, I wore it, for both a fashion statement and a threat to other husks. I started to get swarmed by an overwhelming amount of husks, but skillfully, I took care of them. After they were dead, I checked on my farms.
Oh my god, we finally have carrots. Oh my god, I'm so smart. Oh my god, we finally have carrots.
After the sun rose onto day 6, I checked on my accumulator and collected iron. Just a single piece though, which is unfortunate because I was going to need, lots. So I went ahead and started making as much as I could for the time being. I then threw some of my logs onto the cutting board to get planks, and then threw some logs into the furnace to get some charcoal. I also started my next quest. I had to make anointing paste, which is crafted from a few of these modded crops. I collected some of the water artichoke, made a watering can with some of the iron I crafted. This watering can is very useful as it can act like a weak bone meal. I also made the cauldron I would need for the quest, with the rest of the iron I had, and using the watering can, I was able to grow some of my crops, including my carrots. Then, using the artichoke, mandrake, icy needle from the snowbell, and belladonna flower, I was able to make an anointing paste. Using the paste, I could right-click it with the cauldron and turn it into a witch's cauldron, which will brew very useful ingredients. I did have to make a campfire and throw it underneath the cauldron to make it useful, but after filling it with some water and throwing in a belladonna flower, water artichoke, and a bone meal, it started to have this really cool particle effect, and then I right-clicked it and got 3 pieces of mutandis. That thing. But before I could use this mutandis, I started to get shot by a skeleton, so I went back to my base and waited out the rest of the night. After the sun rose, I went out, killed an intruder, and then used the newly acquired mutandis on a dead bush, which turned it into a sapling. I finally had an actual source of wood. I went around the nearby land using the rest of my mutandis to get as many varieties of saplings as I could get. After that, I headed back into my base. I made another double chest to continue on my ever-growing chest monster, and trust me, it does not get better. I then headed back to my farm and collected the plants that have grown. I made some bread for some food, and then attempted growing a spruce sapling with my watering can. And oh my god, it actually worked. It wasn't instant, but it was definitely a lot faster than letting it grow naturally. I planted the saplings that fell down from the tree to continue my wood growth, and not in the way that you're thinking. I then made something called the AoE tool. No, not Age of Empires, but in my case, the axe form, which cuts down a lot more wood at once, especially since I don't have any of the useful tree cutter mods. This will make my life a lot easier. I then made the pickaxe form of it. Now, I will be able to mine stone in a 3x3 grid. I spent some time collecting trees for as much wood as possible. We are very low on both wood and charcoal right now, so I need to catch up a bit before I'm able to progress. And then I headed back to the farm and collected the carrots. I placed a wolf's bane with some crop sticks near the wheat, and it mutated into potato seeds. With the newly acquired potatoes, I was able to finish the quest from earlier. The next quest I was going to complete was to make a witch's oven, but for that I would need more iron, and since I am completely out, I had to wait for the incubator to finish making it. While that was incubating, I went to collect some mandrake.
What was that?
Needless to say, I tinkled my pants just a tad. I also made an actual door using the spruce wood, so now I won't have to keep locking myself in every night. Eventually, I had enough iron to make iron bars, one of the ingredients for the oven. And while I waited for the incubator to make the rest of the iron I needed, I headed back into the mining hole to collect some more stone. I also completed a sign for making a warpable sign, but since I didn't have another place to warp to, I didn't really bother in setting it up. I just kind of wanted to complete the quest. Eventually, I had enough iron to make the witch's oven. I really really wanted some protection, not like that, from the amount of mobs that were attacking me from the nighttime, so I decided to craft a ton of cobblestone walls and build a barrier around me, giving me some space for any future builds I decide to do. While I was placing, I quickly ran out of walls, so I had to run to the hill and collect some cobble for more walls. These walls were a little tedious since I decided to build against a hill, so I had to dig around it and hope that I didn't miss any blocks on the other side so that monsters wouldn't be able to jump in. Spoiler alert, they do. After placing the rest of the walls needed to cover the base, I flattened out all the dry dirt on the inside, making it easier to build in the future. Since there was a lot to dig and some pools of water that I had to cover, I unfortunately wasn't able to finish this before the end of the day. Eventually, I was able to finish flattening out the land, and I moved my farm to the corner of the walls so that they wouldn't be right in the middle of the base. Since I still didn't have the most dirt, this tiny patch of dirt was the biggest farm I could build for the time being. After all of that, I can finally continue progressing. I placed my witch oven and looked at what I had to craft next. I had to craft something called gold fiber, which to craft it, I needed a few things I did not have, including odor of purity, which was made from a clay jar and a hawthorn sapling inside the witch's oven. Then a whiff of magic, which was a rowan sapling instead of a hawthorn one in the oven. And then finally, string. So it was time to acquire flax. I can make flax seeds by mutating Botania and wheat. So I grabbed the seeds and ran over to the farms and planted them with the crop sticks, and then watered them until it mutated into flax. Now that I have flax, I finally had a renewable source of wool. I collected flax until I had enough for the fiber, and also 3 pieces of wool for a bed. After collecting the seeds, I threw a hawthorn sapling with a clay jar into the oven and made the odor of purity. But before I can make the whiff of magic, I unfortunately didn't have any rowan saplings. So I had to gather the ingredients to make some more mutandis. While it was brewing, I finally made a bed, a whole 10 days into the world. I then collected the mutandis and threw it on some saplings, but unfortunately, I had no luck in getting a rowan sapling. So I started to make some more mutandis until it started to turn night. So I decided to sleep for the first time to end day 10. By the way, if you guys are enjoying this incredibly difficult mod pack and you would like to see me do 200 days, 300, even complete the entire mod pack, if 5,000 of you click that subscribe button, I'll do it. Also, pretty please leave a like on the video. That'll also help tell me that you guys want to see more of this mod pack. I'm very much so enjoying it. I woke up and collected the mutandis and threw it on my saplings, and guess what? No, like, you'll never guess it. No rowan sapling. So I went ahead and made some more of the mutandis and threw it on the sapling, and finally I got a rowan sapling. I then watered it so I could break it and collect some extra saplings so I wouldn't have to do that process all over again. I then threw it in the oven and collected the whiff of magic. Now I can go over to the cauldron, fill it with water, throw in all of the ingredients, and collect the gold fiber. With the gold fiber, I would have to grow a tree and then place it in the leaves and wait for it to spread. If I break those leaves, there's a chance they will drop a gold leaf. So I plant a cherry blossom tree, place the fiber, and now we just have to wait for the leaves to spread. While I waited, I went ahead and made some copper and cut it on the cutting board to make some prosperity shards, the base ingredient needed for the mystical agriculture mod. Then I combined some of the inferium essence with a hoe and a piece of dirt and a crafting table to make inferium farmland, which will let me plant any of the mystical agriculture seeds. Then putting a seed and 8 pieces of inferium essence into a crafting table allows me to craft inferium seeds. Planting that and growing it with my water can give me a renewable source of essence, which will be huge for future plans. I would continue the mystical agriculture path for more materials, but unfortunately, I would need gold to make the items needed to progress, and I am nowhere near gold. While waiting for the leaves to continue to grow, I say continue very lightly here, since not even a single piece has spread yet. I grew essence for the rest of the night. While I waited, I went ahead and started collecting the materials for the pasture seeds, which included a hay bale, any seed, a hint of rebirth, which was made with spruce saplings in the witch's oven, and then the breath of the goddess, which was made with a birch sapling. While waiting for the ovens to make the respected clay jars, the gold leaves finally started to spread, so I broke some and collected a few pieces of the golden leaf. Putting a single one of those leaves into a crafting grid will make me 2 pieces of gold powder. I will need a lot of those. But first, I had to make a few wooden stands, which were made with a golden leaf combined with a log. We are currently making a ritual. Eventually, I broke enough of the golden leaves to get gold dust for the ritual. With all of the things placed and a birch sapling in the middle, grew it with some bone meal and nothing. Okay. Turns out I didn't add enough of the stands. Let me just add 4 more, replace the sapling, and then golden particles started appearing. The ingredients disappeared, then the tree, and out of seemingly thin air, a pasture seed appeared. Getting this unlocked the next quest chapter. Oh my god, that's a lot. I started the day by making some more dirt, planting it in the corner, and placing my pasture seed on it and getting grass. Though it is very gray, all that work for this, really? Next, I looked at the quest again to see what I could do next, and there was 3 different paths I could take right now. I could go down the Botania path, which is basically just even more magic flowers. I could go to the Nether, or I can make bottled sunshine. After looking at all 3 of the options, I picked the bottled sunshine route for the time being, since it seemed to be the easiest. All I had to do was collect some sand, smelt it into glass, make a bottle, combine that with a plank to make a cork and bottle, right-click the air, and boom! I had bottled sunshine. Next, I'll have to make a natural altar, which is going to require quite a bit of resources. Starting with the altar itself, which wasn't too bad. Using the ritual process we just made, we need a piece of grass, dandelion, poppy, apple, and then an oak tree in the middle to make the altar. To get the grass and flowers, I had to head over to my newly grown grass and bone meal it until I got the flowers I needed. But before I could do that, I made more chests and grew the chest monster even more. This isn't becoming a problem, I swear. After collecting the flowers I had to make even more mutantes, since I didn't have any oak saplings, eventually I was able to get one after a few tries. But before I could continue, monsters started to spawn, so I just went and slept for the night. I also had to go through the process of making another golden fiber, but it was a lot easier this time since I had the required ingredients. After making the fiber, I placed it on the oak tree and waiting for the golden leaves to spread so I can get more dust for the ritual. While I waited for the leaves to spread, I decided to be smart and multitask. I bone mealed some of the grass to get a few pieces of flowers for dye. Combined that dye with a bone meal to get floral fertilizer. Using the fertilizer on the ground, grew these, like magic flowers. Putting those flowers into a crafting grid gives me petals. Then, putting a petal and some cobblestone into a crafting table gets you a petal apothecary. Using this apothecary, I will be able to make a pure daisy. But for that, I will need 4 white petals, which comes from, you guessed it, white flowers, which I did not get from my fertilizer. So I bone mealed the grass some more for more flowers and then made some more fertilizer to get more magic flowers. Using both of them, I was fortunately able to get 1 white flower, which gave me 2 petals. So now, all I had to do was find 1 more white flower. But at this point, it was turning nighttime, so I headed to bed. I was getting kind of bored of the Botania path right now, so I went ahead and continued making the natural altar. I placed the dandelion and poppy, collected the gold leaves, placed the stone, and then finally, the apple and grass. I bone mealed an oak sapling in the middle for the altar to commence and receive the altar. I then used the guidebook for the mods that adds the altar to place down a sort of guide for the multi-block build of the altar structure. I then placed down all of the oak plank floors and then as many of the stone brick pillars as I could before running out. Then I made chisel stone bricks for the floor, and then the rest of the stone brick floors. All I had left was what I thought to be the mossy stone brick blocks. So today I went out to the old ruined buildings to collect them since I remember seeing them there in the beginning. I went around collecting until I had 8 pieces, which would be the amount needed. While exploring, I also found a lava pit pretty close to my base, which would be very useful for when I go to the Nether. I placed them down and nothing. What? Why? I opened the quest book to see if I was missing anything, and it turns out what I was missing was a brain cell or 2, because if I just read it, it was never mossy stone bricks, it was golden stone bricks, which is a stone brick with golden fiber. So I took down all the mossy bricks and spent the rest of the day collecting the ingredients for the fiber pieces I'll need. After spending way too long making the fiber pieces I needed, I'm genuinely starting to become upset with the lack of automation that this pack is offering at this point. I combined it with the stone bricks and placed it on the altar. Thankfully, everything is correct this time, and there's particles to prove it. Then I took a look at what I had to do next for the quest. The next material I had to make was infused iron ingots, which is made by, funnily enough, infusing iron in the natural altar. There were a lot of uses for this iron, but majority of them having to do with aura, which I have a lot. I have so much of, and which is beyond my comprehension, and I have zero clue what any of this means. Anyways, I threw my ingot onto the altar and waited a little bit until it turned green. Got jumped by some husk, thanks guys. The next thing I had to make was an ancient tree sapling. Apparently, the leaves from these trees make aura. But first I had to set up another ritual to create the sapling. I placed the necessary amount of gold dust and realized I had to have a sugar cane for the ritual. The recipe for the cane seeds were easy enough, just water artichoke and snowbell. So I planted the seeds and grew them until they mutated into a sugar cane. I then planted a seed, a dandelion, a poppy, and a gold leaf to finish the ingredients for the ritual. Then the ritual particles appeared, items disappeared, and I received the ancient tree sapling. I then grew the sapling into a giant tree. Now I have aura. I have aura, right, guys? Right? Like I have a lot. Like I would say I naturally have like a lot of aura, right? Like yeah. Anyways, the next quest I aimed to complete in this line was to make a herbivorous absorber, whatever the heck that is, and apparently an excessive aura generates flowers. And this device can turn flowers into an excess of aura. I have no clue what any of this means. I'm just doing what I'm told to at this point. It was a pretty easy recipe though, just 4 ancient planks, the wood from the tree, 3 infused iron, a flower, and then something called a token of joy, which, to craft the token of joy, I, of course, needed to make another ritual. The ingredients were pretty simple for it. Just a bottle of sunshine, an iron, an apple, a golden leaf, a flower, and a torch. It's just getting a bit, tedious, to, say the least, making these rituals over and over and over again, especially since there was still no easy way to get a majority of these materials. Instead of making another ritual right now, I decided to continue making a pure daisy. I made the fertilizer and planted it on the ground. It took a few tries, but thankfully I was able to get the rest of the white petals needed for this daisy. I threw in the petals and seeds with some water into the apothecary and I received the pure daisy. This flower will turn any log and stone into either the living wood or living stone, and a very common ingredient for Botania. So I went ahead and placed some logs, waited for it to turn, and collected the living wood. And then I placed the stone, waited for it to turn, and collected the living stone. Next, I'm going to need a way to generate something called mana. There's a few things I'll need to craft, including a mana spreader, which is 6 living wood logs, a piece of gold, and a petal. This meant I'll have to go to the Nether sometime soon. But for the rest of the day, I just made another chest to store the loot I'll need for the herbivorous absorber, since I will need quite a bit of materials. First thing I did today was go ahead and start placing the items needed for the token of joy. But before I could continue, I would need more oak saplings because I was starting to run low. So I started chopping some trees to collect as much saplings as I could for the time being. Then I placed the apple, the iron ingots, the gold leaf, the flower, and then the torch. Then I placed an oak tree down and then the gold dust. Turns out you can't place the tree first, so I had to take that down and then replace it for the ritual to commence. I have now acquired the token of joy. Thankfully, it crafted me 2 tokens, so if I need another one, which I most definitely will, I'll already have it. Then I combined it with the infused iron, ancient logs, and a flower to finally make the herbivorous absorber. I placed it expecting something to happen, but nothing did happen, and I really didn't feel like figuring out what to do to make it work since I really didn't care about aura. As annoying as it is, this is going to be pretty useless for the majority of the video. But now that I had that built, I can finally start figuring out how to make gold. But first, I had to go to the Nether. So I grabbed a bucket of water and headed to the lava pit. Then, very flawlessly, like a professional speedrunner, no mistakes at all, I built the frame for the portal. Then I realized I forgot flint and steel. Oops. It's okay though, because it's starting to turn night anyways. Day 20 to 21. After making a flint and steel, I walked all the way back to the Nether portal, lit it, and went inside. So the virus that ruined the overworld has not only been, to the overworld, but to the Nether as well. In the Nether, nothing spawns. There's only the singular biome, and there's no gold ore. But I didn't know this until after this trip, so bear with me here as I waste time yet again because I don't know how to read. I enter the Nether and start exploring and looking for the gold ore. I mine a bunch and start to bridge over to the other piece of land until my pickaxe becomes very close to breaking. So I make it back to my portal, run back home, and make another pickaxe or two. Then I make my way back to the portal, but this time, instead of wandering in confusion, I read the quest line and yeah, that says all the changes I just mentioned. So figuring that I would need a lot of netherrack for different recipes, I spent the next day mining it until my pickaxes broke. After that, I headed back to the overworld and started smelting some of it in the furnace for bricks, and then head to sleep for the night. For some reason, instead of working on gold, I decided to make lead instead, which is fine because I will need a lot of it for future machines. The problem lies in how expensive it is. To make only 2 ingots, I will need to do another ritual that consists of 2 infused iron, 2 nether bricks, and a spruce sapling. And since I still don't have a way to automate iron to make the amount I'm going to need is going to take a while to say the least. I collect all of the ingredients necessary for the lead, make the ritual, and collect my first piece of lead. After collecting it, I look through the quest and start to make the mechanical core. It requires a lead plate, which is both of the pieces of lead I just made. I combine that with some calmanite bricks and iron to craft the mechanical core. Then I make the ember bore with even more iron, more calmanite bricks, a piece of copper, and then the mechanical core I just made. You see, this machine will mine ember for me when it's at bedrock. That ember will turn into power. The power will power another machine that will make me dawnstone. This is a long and confusing path of machinery that I am not rich enough for quite yet, but nonetheless, I continue the process of making more lead for the time being. I decided that I had to find a way to make these resources faster. And since I knew nothing about the bee mod, I landed on making my resources through that. But there was a few basic things I had to do to get started, which included making a scoop to gather bees. For that, I needed some wool, so I went over to my farm and grinded the flax until I had more than enough string needed. Then I made an apiary? A pyre, that thing, whatever that thing right there is, yeah, which will have to be the home for the bees. Then I ran to where I was cutting trees in the very beginning of the video, since I remember seeing a beehive there. After searching around for a bit, I found the beehive. I mined it with my scoop, and then a wasteland drone and princess dropped. I ran back home, surrounded the apiary in dead bushes, and threw our newly acquired bees into the apiary. Very slowly, they will produce us barren combs and dead logs. But eventually, we will be able to mutate them into better types of bees, so that we can actually get, good resources. Putting the combs onto the cutting board and chopping them with a knife will give us beeswax and honey drops. The sun started to set, and I realized that they unfortunately do not work throughout the night, since they sleep too for some odd reason, so I went ahead and rested for the night. I started the day with checking on my bees, and I do so throughout in hopes that they end up mutating into a new type, but I was either getting really unlucky, or I was reading everything wrong, because I was not getting anything new. I was just essentially bouncing back and forth on types of bees. But while they do their thing, I said doo-doo, I started on making gold. First thing I had to do was combine nether bricks with fiber. So I gathered all of the materials and threw it into the cauldron to make some fiber. Then I placed it near the pure daisy, and after a while, it turned into the nether gold ore, which only dropped nuggets. So this meant I was going to have to repeat this process a bunch. So I continued making more gold and fiber for the rest of the day. Day 25. This was a very lazy kind of day, as I was essentially just constantly checking on the bees, cutting the combs, and making some gold. I did eventually make the mana spreader with the gold that I now received. I was also starting to come to the realization that if I didn't want to do this bee thing blind, I would need a few different types of analyzers, which meant I would need redstone. Thankfully, if I continue down the Botania path, there is a quest in which teaches me on how to make redstone. But eventually the sun sets on day 25, which means we are officially 25% done with this 100 days. which also, according to YouTube, only 25% of you are subscribed. I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, it's not like that at all. I don't really check that at all, but it would mean a lot to me if you would subscribe, please and thank you. Okay, so, funny thing, yeah, my computer kind of freaked out and it made my OBS crashed while I was recording this day, and, something happened with the footage, and it's just this. But I will briefly explain everything I did. I made a mana pool using 5 pieces of living rock, and then I made an Endo Flame flower. Placing the Endo Flame flower and then connecting them to a mana spreader and then connecting that to the mana pool now means that I have a way to get and use mana. To get mana, I just throw charcoal onto the flowers and it'll generate it very slowly. The mana pool stores said mana, and I can either use that mana on something else, or I can throw certain items into the pool to transform them for a set amount of mana. I'm really starting to notice a theme with flowers and magic in this mod pack. I started the day by turning logs into living wood logs with a pure daisy, and then using 2 petals to make the wand of the forest. This very useful tool will let me bind the spreader to different mana storage items. After lots of confusion on how to make mana, I look up some guides online and learn I just have to throw charcoal and it will slowly make mana and put it into the spreader. After a while, the pool fills up enough for me to throw an ender pearl inside to get a mana pearl. And before the end of the night, I put some stone near the pure daisy to make living rock. After the stone turned into living rock, I collected it and combined it with the mana pearl in a crafting table to make a runic altar. Yet another altar. Yay! Anyways, using the runic altar is sort of like a mana crafting table. But the first thing I'm going to be making is a fell pumpkin, combining string, bone, rotten flesh, gunpowder, and a pumpkin. But first, I needed a pumpkin. Before I started making pumpkin seeds, I connected the runic altar to the mana spreader. Then I started making pumpkin seeds by combining carrot seeds and potato seeds, and very quickly collected the pumpkins I needed. I then put in all of the ingredients needed for the fell pumpkin, and then started putting charcoal onto the Endo Flame flowers for creating mana to power the altar. After collecting the fell pumpkin, I placed 2 iron bars and then the fell pumpkin on top to make an imitation blaze. It definitely hurts like a real one though. After killing the wannabe blaze, it dropped 10 blaze powder. Next thing I started was making a crumbling catalyst. It was a pretty easy ritual with just 2 flint, 2 of the golden stone bricks, 2 living rock, 2 token of joy, and then a spruce tree in the middle. I did the ritual and collected the catalyst and headed to bed. I also started the process of making a distillery, but first I'll need an attuned stone, which is just a whiff of magic, mana pearl, and a gold leaf and a witch cauldron. I gathered the materials needed and threw it into the cauldron, and nothing happened. I looked up some guides to see what I was doing wrong, and it turned out I didn't have enough ritual power. I'll have to create a structure capable of powering my cauldron even more. And guess what I had to make? An altar. This is like my 4th altar so far. I need to craft 6 altar blocks and place it in a 2x3 rectangle, and it'll start collecting power. They're pretty easy to make though. It's just a gold nugget, a breath of the goddess, exhaled of the horned one, 2 rowan logs, and 4 stone bricks. I then spent majority of the day collecting all of the materials needed, and then built enough of the altars. I placed them near the cauldron and planted some saplings to increase my ritual power. Now that I had enough ritual power, I can throw in all of the ingredients again, and I can make an attuned stone and make a distillery. Now, with the catalyst I crafted earlier, I can place it near the nature altar and place netherrack in the altar to make cinder flour. Placing the blaze powder and cinder flour into the distillery, and I finally receive redstone. Now that I have redstone, I can make a centrifuge using iron, smooth stone, chest, and the redstone. Then I make an analyzer with gold, glass pane, infused iron, caminite, a tripwire. I had explained what these things do, but I'm really not understanding the B mod right now. I'm also not liking how slow it is to get absolutely anything. But for the rest of the day, I continue messing with the bees, and hopefully I can get something new soon. Yeah, this was honestly just a really slow day. I just spent the entirety of it just messing with the bees. I don't know what else to put for this day. Okay, to be honest, I'm starting to think all of this bee stuff was a waste of time. It might be more useful if I had more items to begin with in the first place, but I don't. So instead, I look into mystical agriculture and decide to go down that route. But first, I'll need to make the altars, which is fairly easy to make. The only difficult thing will be the 18 gold ingots I'll need. So I started smelting netherrack to make nether bricks so I can get more gold. I started the day by checking on the bees, but there's nothing new yet again. After this, I started making mana with my endo flowers. Waited for the pool to fill up, and then threw another ender pearl into the pool to make a mana pearl. Then I made another attuned stone with all of the ingredients in the witch cauldron. Then I headed over to my farm to make some more string with flax. Then, combining rowan stairs, logs, a piece of wool, string, and an attuned stone, I can make a spinning wheel. Using the spinning wheel, I can make golden fiber a whole lot easier. I just throw in some blaze powder, icy and bone needle, and it'll make me 3 pieces of golden fiber. Now that I had a better source of golden fiber, I can make the golden nether bricks easier, so I can start farming gold a bit faster. I do the back and forth of making gold for the rest of the day until I had enough to start the mystical agriculture altar. I was able to make a few of the pedestals needed, but unfortunately couldn't make enough in the day, so I headed to bed to rest the night out. For the first half of the day, I continued the loop of checking the bees, making golden nether bricks, waiting for it to turn, collecting the gold, and making pedestals. But while I wait for the gold to grow, I also start the process of making elemental seeds, which will be the base for continuing mystical agriculture after the altars are done. Especially since I'll need the different types of essence to make the next tier of inferium essence. To start, I'll need air, nature, water, and fire agglomeratio. Oh yeah, we're gonna ratio them all. They are all pretty easy to make. I just need dirt, gravel, clay, and then a random block pertaining to the algomashma. For the fire, it's lava, the nature is grass, the water is obviously water, and the air is a bottle. I spent the rest of the day making the algomashma ratios I could with the materials I collect throughout the day. The only one left is the fire, which I just had to make a trip to the lava pool to make. I started the day by collecting some gold and making another pedestal. Then I ran over to the lava pool and collected a lava bucket. Now I had every algomeratio I needed. While waiting for more to grow to transform, I grow some inferium essence, since I'll need a bunch for upgrading it. After doing that, I collected more gold and finally finished the pedestals. I then made some prosperity seeds bases with seeds and prosperity shards for the nature seeds. And finally, I made all of the seeds with the different algomeratios. I spent the beginning half of the day growing each seed from the newly required mystical agriculture seeds, and finally made the next tier of essence with each nature essence and 3 inferium. I was going to need a lot of this new essence for whatever I wanted to make, so I started the farming arc. Remember how in the beginning of the video I mentioned the tiers that will come with plants when you put them into a crop stick? Turns out you can upgrade those tiers by mutating them together. So I spent the entirety of the rest of the day starting the process of planting, mutating, planting that seed, and repeating on the inferium seeds, slowly making my way to 10 for all tiers. Once again, the entirety of day 37 just planting and replanting. I did finally get to 10 for one of the tiers though, getting ever so closer. And finally, I got the 10 out of 10 inferium essence seed. Now, time to move on to the nature seeds. Turns out, if you breed any crop with a 10 out of 10 crop, there's a pretty high chance of the newly mutated crop to be a 10 out of 10. So I threw down the nature seeds, I mutated them with the inferium, and boom! I got it perfect on the first try. I wish I could say I did it again with the water seeds on the first try, but unfortunately, this ended up taking a little while. But I did end up getting it at the end of the day. I woke up and moved on to the air seeds. This one didn't take too long, only a few tries, and finally, I got to the last seed, the fire seeds. Now that I had enough essence to produce the upgraded inferium once again, I took a look at how to get to the next tier, since in this tier were lead and iron seeds. It turns out I would need a nether essence, which came from netherrack, nether brick, soul sand, and warts. Now, I'm not entirely sure how to get either soul sand or the warts, but after looking into the warts, it turned out I can get them from mutating red and brown mushrooms. But first, I would need to make the seeds of both. Starting with the brown seeds, I would need mandrake and potato, so I started the process of mutating those to get my brown mushrooms, but unfortunately, The sun started to set before I can get lucky enough to get any. Now, I did forget to hit record on the start of day 40, but I did eventually get my brown mushroom seeds, which were carrot seeds and mandrake together, and I ended up getting them pretty quickly. So now I can move on to making nether warts. For the mutation to work, I would have to cover the mushrooms completely because they only grow in the dark, and nothing. What? I looked it up, and turns out for nether wart to grow, I need soul sand, which I have no way of getting at this point. Turns out I can get soul sand with blaze rods, which requires a ritual, which requires me to dive into the long path of mechanical stuff that I have been avoiding up to this point. Day 41. I spent the first half of the day looking into the quest to try and avoid getting into the mechanical stuff right now, but then I remembered that if a plant's level is high enough, it ignored the spawning requirements. So I started the process of mutating the ingredients for the mushrooms to level 10, so that I can make a level 10 mushroom, so that I can make a level 10 nether wart, so that I can avoid making soul sand right now. So for the rest of the day, I started working on the mandrake. Eventually, I got the mandrake to a high enough level to breed with potatoes, to get a high level brown mushroom, and then throw down the red mushrooms, and finally I have another wart. Then I look into ways to get soul sand, which turns out I need to do a ritual to get a transmutation catalyst to turn regular boring sand into soul sand. But to make the catalyst, I would need dawnstone, the ingredient that is made with all of the mechanical stuff, which means I have no choice but to start making all of the pieces needed. I start by making the ember activator, then the ember emitter, then ember receptor, and finally the ember relay. I would explain what any of this stuff is or does, but I have no clue. The next thing I make is something called a melter. This might surprise you, but most likely this is a thing that melts. Then the stamp base and a stamper. You'll never guess what a stamper is. I'm sorry. Then I craft a ton of ladders and start mining my way down to bedrock. You see, for me to get something called ember, the machines need to sit on top of bedrock to collect it, which I can turn the ember into power, which will allow me to power more machines to make dawnstone. I make my way down to bedrock, mine out a little area, and add some water, and then slowly add some ladders back up to finish off the day. These next few days were spent very, very confused, so I'll spare you the viewing of watching me place 2 blocks of machinery and being confused, so I open a guide and then repeat. I place down the coil, power it with charcoal. That is making me ember. Using the ember, I'm able to make power, which will let me power another machine to make a mixer. Using that mixer, I can smelt down copper and gold to mix it together, and then bring that to a stamp base with pipes and stamp it down with an ingot plate to finally get dawnstone. There's a lot. I'm sorry, it's very confusing. I kind of doubt that you guys really want to hear about all of this nerdy stuff. But anyways, now that I have dawnstone, I can finally throw all of the ingredients into the ritual needed to make a transmutation catalyst. After throwing that down onto the altar, I can place a piece of sand and finally, oh my gosh, I have soul sand. With all the ingredients necessary, now I can finally make nether seeds. I throw it all into the mystical agriculture altar and make them. And then I spent the rest of the day just mutating all of that up to get all of them to be level 10 so I can get as much nether essence yield as possible. I get that to all 10s, and now I can make the next tier of inferium essence. I checked the recipe one last time to see all of the ingredients once again, and turns out I didn't read once again. I'm missing something called ice essence, which meant I would need ice seeds. Yay! Since 1, I don't have any to make any ice, and 2, even if I could make ice, I don't have silk touch. So I spent the rest of the day reading through the recipes to make ice. Which, okay, I learned 2 things. I can turn snow, which I can obtain easily with the snow flowers from the beginning, into ice by using the pure daisy. Then I can use something called a rune of water, which I can put on the Botania spreader, which will act like a magic silk touch sort of thing. So I basically spent the entirety of today making all of the things necessary to start getting blue ice. Day 50. Just like how only 50% of you are subscribed. I'm sorry. Halfway there. I throw down the rune on the spreader and then the snow near the daisy and wait for it to turn. And it melted. Okay, cool. What do I do now? Turns out I can get ice from a alchemy catalyst, which means I need blaze rods, so now I have to make some chalk. I would need a red chalk, which requires nether wart, some gold, a piece of white chalk, and 2,000, oh my god, altar power. Oh, I only have 500 right now, so I will definitely need more. So I spent the rest of today just researching on what to do and adding some flowers and trees around the altar to very slowly increase my altar power. Then, using my distillery, I can get some gypsum to make white chalk and then combine it with nether wart and a tainted gold ingot to make the red chalk. I then put all of the red chalk on the ground in a very specific order to make this circle, and then threw a fell pumpkin, a rune of fire, which I made during the day, then a foul odor, and hint of rebirth in the middle, expecting a blaze to spawn, but nope. Of course not. Of course, nothing can work first try. Turns out, there was a few reasons as to why this isn't working. I need a piece of golden chalk in the middle, and I need a lot more altar power. So, for the beginning half of the day, I collected all of the materials needed for gold chalk, which included a piece of dawnstone, white chalk, and then a piece of mandrake. Thankfully, I could get all of that really easily. I had extra dawnstone and mandrake, and all I had to do was get another piece of white chalk. After acquiring everything, I spent the rest of the day researching how to get more altar power and added as much foliage and trees as I could to very slowly increase my altar power. And for seriously all of day 53, I kept adding plants. Oh, and also random trees to increase the altar power until I had enough to throw all of the materials into the cauldron to finally get golden chalk. Now that I had golden chalk, I placed a piece in the middle. I threw all of the stuff in the middle. I right-clicked and a real blaze spawned. And when I killed it, I got blaze rods. Then, combining living rock, 2 pieces of gold, a mana pearl, and 2 brewing stands, I had the alchemy catalyst. Then, placing that under a mana pool and throwing in a piece of snow, I was able to acquire ice. Then, combining 9 pieces of ice, I was able to get packed ice. Then, having the mana spreader with the rune from earlier going towards the packed ice, once the packed ice turned into the blue ice from the pure daisy, I could place a torch under it and pick it up, but I just had to figure out how this works. Now, welcome to day 55. Also, I'm just curious, you know, how many of you make it to this part in the video. If you could just comment, hey, Skies, I made it to day 55, that'd be cool. I just want to see how many of you do it. I figured it out. I just had to add a piece of redstone to the mana spreader to make a pulse mana spreader. And now, the rune will work with a redstone signal. So, adding a lever, I could collect blue ice. So I spent the majority of the day collecting 4 pieces of blue ice so I could add it to the mystical agriculture altars, and then added the second tier of infernum essence, and then the seed base to make ice seeds. I then spent a while mutating the ice seeds with infernum seeds to upgrade the level of it and collect ice essence. After doing that, I could finally collect all the materials to get to the next tier of Infernum Essence. The only thing I needed left was the second tier of Infernum Essence turned into a block, so I basically just spent the day making more. Now that I finally had a block, I could throw it on the altar and started making the next tier. But since I'll need 4, and since it'll take a very long time to convert, I spent this day making more essence for another block while waiting. And then once again, I spent the majority of the day just making more essence, until I had enough. I added an iron block, the 4 essence and 2 mana infused iron to make iron seeds. Then I spent the rest of the day making the iron seeds a better tier. After getting the essence to level 10, I had a renewable source of iron. Oh my god, this arc is finally over. I'm free. This will make progressing a disgustingly amount faster. One of the things I haven't been showing in the video is just the constant loop of getting materials, since that is very boring, and I'm afraid my average viewer duration would drop faster than a blind man on stilts during a hurricane. Now that I could continue on in the quest, I would have to make some pedestals, an exchange tablet, and a beam cannon pulse for some energetic alchemy. But before I could do that, I would need a lot more dawnstone and ember, so I headed back down to the bedrock and collected the ember I need, and then spent the rest of the day making more dawnstone. Kind of a boring day. All I did was continue crafting the materials needed for the energetic alchemy until I had enough to craft each individual piece. I then placed them all in the order that the quest book says and tried crafting the archaic brick. Since this method of crafting is purely luck, if you don't place the materials in the specific order correctly, they turn into waste. So using the archaic brick, I can make a tool to help figure out the order the materials go. But for the life of me, I cannot get the alchemy to work. Back to the guides I go! I continued looking through the quest to see if I was missing something. Turns out, all I had to do was power the machine with the ember. So I went back down to the Ember area and collected the battery where I've been storing the Ember power. I headed back up and connected it to the alchemy crafting table, and watch as it showed an actual laser beam into the middle. And then I got some archaic brick. Next item I'll be crafting is the code-breaking slate, which, if I put the waste into the slate, it'll show me how many item combinations I got right. So instead of pure luck to craft something, it's just process of elimination instead. I was starting to run out of lead for the crafting of archaic bricks, so it's time to begin the tedious process of making lead seeds so I won't run out again. It'll require 4 of those orange essence that takes forever to get, 2 lead ingots, an andesite alloy, a material from crate that requires some lead ingots and andesite. I have avoided the crate mod entirely up to this point. I'm too busy with all the other, mod packs in this one. I really don't want to add that very difficult to, understand mod pack to all of this, or else I'm just really afraid that I'm gonna break something. I have everything exactly where it needs to be and how it goes, and I don't want to mess it up. But then, the final piece for the seeds, a lead block. Oh boy. I spent a while collecting iron essence for ingots, turning them into nature-infused ingots, and then tripling my outputs using the salt machines from the very beginning of the video. I just continued making lead in all of the ingredients I had throughout the day, including the andesite alloy and all of the essence I'll need for the lead seeds. Nothing of note happened today either, besides waiting for ingredients to continue to be made, though I finally made a backpack and upgraded it to iron immediately. I placed the last bit of essence in the mystical agriculture altar and made the lead seeds. Then I started the process of mutating the lead seeds to tier 10. I continued leveling up the seeds to level 10 for the first half of the day. Then after hitting level 10, which now meant I had an easy renewable source of lead, I headed back down to the bedrock level to collect some more ember power for my battery. I placed the battery down and checked how much ember has been collected while I was gone, and oh my god, it was a lot. Which meant I had more than enough power for the rest of the video. After powering on my battery, I headed back up and connected it to the laser to power that up while I rest during the night. On day 6-7, I started I'm so sorry, please don't click off the video. I started the process of continuing the quest book to make an offering table to finally make actual life. The goal being a chicken. Not very sentient, but I'll take it. But first, I finally made the code-breaking slate, since the ritual would probably take a few tries and the laser to make. To make it, I'll need a runic altar from Botania. A token of joy, a token of fear. The altar and the token of joy are easy, but I've never made the token of fear. My first assumption on how to make it is possibly playing League of Legends for 1 week straight. The only ingredients of note are a feather and bottled ghost. Starting with the bottled ghost, I made more glass and a cork, and then instead of clicking in the overworld to bottle sunshine, I headed to the Nether and right-clicked in there, and I got a bottled ghost. But by the time that this was done, the sun was setting, so I just went to bed for the night. Then, for the feather, I put an alchemy catalyst under a mana pool. I grew some flax, then I threw the flax in the mana pool to get feathers. I threw all of the ingredients together, and I made the token. Then I started the process of making the offering table. I threw all of the ingredients, and I got ash. Using the ash on the slate, I could see what I got right, and then I tried again, and ash again, so I threw it on the offering table again and was about to put all of the ingredients on the correct spot and turn on the laser and got the offering table. Then I threw in the bottled ghost, the bottled sunshine, the tainted gold ingot, and a whiff of magic into a witch cauldron for a spirit of calling for the offering table. By the time the cauldron was done mixing, it was sleepy time. But on day 69, stop laughing, I threw down the offering table and started placing flowers all around it. I'm gonna need a lot of flowers, but thankfully I could place any type of flower. After placing the flowers needed, I started making a feather flesh amalgam. Amalgam? That thingy. That right there. The thing that's on the screen. Shut up. Stop leaving me in comments. It was a simple ritual with 4 rotten flesh and 4 feathers with an oak tree in the middle. Then I threw the amalgam, I'm just gonna call it Instagram, I'm sorry, into the liquefaction cauldron with some hemoglobbic fluid from the blooded amalgam. What the heck are any of these words? Then I made a mana-infused amalgam through a runic altar with pasture seeds, mana powder, and the blooded amalgam. Then for the next amalgam, Instagram. You know, actually here. Okay, so instead of like, you know, me saying that weird like amalgram, whatever that is, I'm just gonna say animal Instagram, okay? And then you guys are just gonna have to figure out that that means that thingy right there, the amalgam, okay? However you pronounce this stupid word. Anyways. Then, for the next animal Instagram, I would need to make a massive chalk circle. So, I started to place everything in the order that the quest book said. Then, I started collecting the ingredients needed for the ritual, but unfortunately, the sun started to set. Day 70. I then threw in all of the ingredients into the middle, and nothing. So, I tried again, and nothing. I tried destroying the circles and replacing it to see if I placed it wrong, and nothing. I kid you not, I spent the entire day researching why this is not working. And then I accidentally ended the recording. Yay, yippee! Basically, what I was missing was that rune power, so I moved the altar and added all of the flowers and upgrades to get as much runic power as possible. And then I threw the animal Instagram onto the offering table with a spirit of calling for a chicken egg. Collecting the chicken egg unlocked the final quest chapter in, oh boy. It was a long one, but completing this last chapter would save the world and turn it back to normal. But before I could even think about it turning normal, I started making the next item for the quest line, the Altar of Birthing, which, using Aura, which I have so much of, I can make a Spirit of Birthing to spawn even more animals. Talking about Aura farming, for the altar, I would need 4 ingots of these skies. Oh, hey, that's me. Which I can make by throwing in nature-infused ingots into the offering table. 2 blocks of wheat, 2 iron bars, and a token of euphoria. No, not that show. We're talking about something good here. I'm sorry. And I threw in the altar into the pen I made for the chicken. Side note, this is not how it works. I just didn't read how it worked. And then looking into the quest book, the next thing I would need to do is something called blood magic. Now, day 72 was kind of a boring day. I read the quest book to look into blood magic. I waited for eggs so I could breed my chicken, but no luck. And then I made a bunch of iron and then threw it into the nature altar to make armor and tools since I still had no armor at this point. Eventually, I got an egg that gave me a baby chicken. Then I gave the baby chicken a bunch of wheat seeds to expedite the growing process and then breeded it with the other chicken. Kind of expecting the spirit I would need for the quest to appear, but nothing. I have no idea how aura works. I'm auraless. But I'm talking about like in-game, like in real life, I have so much. And then I spent the entire day trying to read through the quest to see if I was missing something to get this spirit. Day 74 was once again a boring day. I really had no idea what I was doing at this point. I was just breeding the chickens again and again, but I still haven't gotten the spirit. Turns out the reason I haven't gotten any spirits yet was because I was genuinely auraless. And so it turns out the herbivorous absorber from the beginning actually had a use. But for that, I would need a lot of flowers. So using breeding, I can make different types of flowers to get them a lot easier. But before I could place anything, the chicken pen was getting cramped. So before heading to bed for the night, I made a bunch of fences. So for the beginning half of the day, I just placed down a bunch of flowers and I let it get absorbed by the herbivorous absorber to turn it into aura. Using that newly obtained aura, I then breeded the chickens and got the spirit needed to complete the first actual quest of the new chapter. The next thing I'll have to do is to make a soul snare. Using that, I'll throw it at a monster, and then when I kill that said monster, I'll get a demonic will. So I quickly made the soul snare and then threw it at a monster during the night. I collected the demonic will and then I headed to sleep for the night. The next thing I'll need to make is a blood altar. I swear I have an altar for like literally everything in this game. Using a furnace, the demonic will, 3 gold, and 4 blackstone, I can make the altar. But for me to make blackstone, I'll need to collect some stone essence and nether essence, craft it together to make the blackstone, and then collected the blood altar. Then I made the sacrificial knife for the blood altar. I right-clicked with a knife near the altar, which damaged me, but the damage turned into life essence for the blood altar. Then throwing a piece of stone into the life essence to craft a blank state. Then after adding quite a bit more life essence into the blood altar, I threw in a mana pearl for a weak blood orb. Using this slate and blood orb, I'll be able to upgrade this altar to the next tier. And after crafting blank runes, I placed it around the altar and upgraded it to tier 2. I then made a redstone block, and then, I kid you not, I spent the entire day taking damage at the altar and slowly letting it fill up and waiting for me to heal and rinse and repeat till it was completely full, so I could throw in the redstone block. We were getting to a part of the game where any form of progression seriously comes out of just waiting. Waking up on day 80, the redstone block turned into an apprentice blood orb. The next thing I started to make were runes of sacrifices, which upgraded the speed of my altar ever so slightly. The goal I am working on right now is upgrading the tier of the altar again, but I would need a lot more life essence, so I just sat there and attacked myself. But for that, I would need a lot more blank runes. But every time I crafted more, I would place it so I could progress very slowly. And for day 81, you guessed it! I just slowly progressed on making the blank runes to upgrade the altar. But eventually, I was able to finish placing all the blank runes needed for the next tier of altar. Then for the rest of the day, I filled the altar with the life essence and upgrading my runic slate once again. I spent all of today just building new rune upgrades to upgrade my capacity and speed of life essence to make collecting it a bit easier. Now, before we continue, with the amount of work and research and reading that this mod pack requires, it would genuinely mean the world to me if you guys could just leave a like on the video and just leave a comment just being like, Skies, I'm so impressed with you with all of that reading. You did fantastic. Just something like that, because oh my goodness, there's a reason why I haven't uploaded on this channel in so long. This mod pack is genuinely intense and insane. Now, moving forward in the quest, I can now make something called osmium. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, but oh well. Want to be the first. By throwing one of the slates into the offering table. Osmium will be very useful to make new tech moving forward. But before I can do anything related to machinery, I'll need a source of power. Thankfully, using something called a mana flux field, I can turn the Botania mana into RF, which is redstone flux. To make it, it's pretty easy. All I need is 4 living rock, 4 redstone blocks, and a mana-infused ingot. So I quickly gathered all of the materials, and I can start generating power. And for me to start using this power, I will make a metallurgic infuser, which is just 1 osmium, 4 iron ingots, 2 redstone, and 2 furnaces. The infuser will turn ingots into dust and other various materials. Putting an iron into the infuser gave me steel dust. Then, when I smelt the dust, I can get steel ingots, which is another very critical metal moving forward in terms of technology, which I can use with control circuits made from the metallurgic infuser to make an enrichment chamber, which makes enriched versions of items that are 8 times more efficient, whatever that means. I then use an alchemy table, which I can combine with some carrots, bone meal, and then my blood orb to make plant oil. And then in the alchemy table, I combined the plant oil with redstone, sugar, a water bottle, gunpowder, and coal dust. Which, admittedly, that took an embarrassing amount of time to figure out how to make, and combined it with my blood orb yet again to make basic cutting fluid. A very important item that will lead us into finally obtaining diamonds. I make an alchemical reaction chamber, throw in the cutting fluid, a block of glowstone, and some life essence to obtain lapis lazuli. Then I threw a block of lapis into the reaction chamber, but before I could continue the process of changing it into the next form of mineral, I would need more life essence, so I continued slowly filling it up until it turned dark. Eventually, I turned the lapis into amethyst, and then repeated the process of filling the life essence for a while, till I had my first diamond. I also made quartz using redstone, but that was pretty much just for the quest completion. Up next, there was a few things I could do moving forward, but the next thing I did was make a Hellfire Forge, which allows me to use Demonic Will. The stuff I got when I killed monsters from earlier, yeah, that point, but anyways, this will allow me to make special items. So I spent the rest of the day collecting all of the items and eventually crafting the forge. I then collected 1 more demonic will from a husk before heading to bed for the night. I then make a pretty tartaric gem to complete the quest, and then moving forward, the next big thing to complete is making terra steel ingots. But first, I'll have to make another altar. But to actually craft the ingots, I'll first need a whole lot of runes from Botania. So I spent the rest of the day crafting everything I need. And then today was just another recipe collecting day, but I do get very close. Not like that. Thankfully, on the beginning of day 89, I managed to craft the altar piece needed for making the ingots. I then collect all of the materials needed for the terra steel, throw it on the altar, and nothing. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, obviously you see the problem. It's, okay, hold on, just let me spend the rest of the day researching yet again. Okay, now, I need, Dave, I need you to just really pay attention here, okay? So, we now enter the most painful arc of the video. And the only way to make this entertaining for you guys, we have to go through all 8 days relatively fast. So, me trying to learn how magic and mana works. It turns out the reason that the Terra Steel didn't get made is because I didn't have the altar fully crafted correctly. So, I fixed that and then tried again. Nothing. Turns out, I am not producing nowhere near enough mana to be making the Terra Steel. So, I spent 6 days increasing my mana output and making the farm faster. It took me forever, and I genuinely never want to mess with Botania again. Even though I will need a lot more Terra Steel, I finally made my first bit of Terra Steel. Then I made this wannabe portal with some mana pylons. I had to collect even more mana from the flowers. Then I thought I was supposed to walk in, but no. I just throw items in and it will spit something else out. I couldn't tell you if this was a waste of Terra Steel or not, but I would have had to craft it eventually anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Plus, the items it gives back are ingredients for future recipes, so it's not at all a waste. I'll need way more Terra Steel moving forward, but I don't want to do that right now. So instead, we're going to move into a different type of magic. Ars Novio. However you pronounce this word right here. Yeah, that one. It's a cool kind of magic and not a lame magic. But first, I had to throw in an ancient tree sapling into the life altar to get this new type of tree. Then, after chopping that down and using its wood to make an imbuement chamber, I can make something called source gems with lapis. But first, I'll need a magic book. I quickly make one using a normal vanilla book, mana steel tools, and some of those source gems from the chamber. I then make some spells for the book and start using cool magic. Continuing down this path of ours, I'll need a lot more source gems, but I'm not making them very fast. Luckily, I can make it do things. I can make a source jar, which will store excess sources for when I start producing more of it. And then there's something called a source link, which produces sources from various different methods. I look at the agrometric source link, which lets me make sources from trees and crop growth. I make the source link and throw down some saplings so that I can very slowly produce sources. Then I look in the quest book for the next thing I need to do. Turns out I need to make enchanting stuff for ours, but to make those, I need pedestals for, yeah, you guessed it, yet another altar. Yay. I quickly made a pedestal, but before I could craft anything, the sun started to set, ending day 100. Now, Dave, I just have to say, the mod pack was fun at times. I did have a good time on this one, but oh my goodness gracious, there was so much reading in this. There's barely anything online. For one of the sections in here, I actually had to follow a YouTube video where it wasn't even a guide, it was just someone playing. And I would have to, kind of copy what they were doing into my world so that then, I can actually progress through the quest book. It's just blah, 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 blah. I know, woe is me. It's just, this mod pack took so much work, and I'm sorry for how long it took me to get this video out, but there was just so much to this that I really, really hope that you guys enjoyed. But I'm not sure if you will want me to make a 200 days on this, as I'm hoping that this wasn't so confusing to follow. I really did try my best to make this, understandable to the average, person, me. But I hope that, it was still fun to watch the journey and watch me, just create all of this stuff in the world. And, yeah, no, I hope that you guys enjoyed. And I promise you the next video will be coming out a lot faster. I'm going to go do a different mod pack. But if you guys really want me to make 200 days on this one, just 10,000 of you click that subscribe button, please. I need a lot of encouragement to, continue this one. But anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.